the recent phenomena of home office or working or working from home. Yeah. WFH, I think it's called now. Yeah. Has obviously, due to the COVID a few years ago, a couple of years ago, was accelerated. It was starting to happen before then. Well, there's been some interesting things. June last year, there was a survey done by an organization. And it's pretty reflective of most other things I've read. I think it's 61% of employees say they feel they're more productive when they're working from home. Yeah. Yeah. Um, they feel, yeah, they get more things done. Yeah. The strange thing is, um, some employees may disagree with this. Some agree, some disagree. Yeah. And but there's now another strange thing that's beginning to happen is that people who work from home feel a slight piece of more stress, what they call it, productivity stress. Yeah. Um, Almost as if they feel under more pressure to be more productive. Yeah. Um, Now, it's a rather interesting thing, whereas people obviously, we talk about the work home life balance and things like this and well-being, which a lot of companies are trying to employ more. It is now, yeah, it's almost counterintuitive. Why do people feel this? Um, it's it's probably more to do with human nature than anything. Yeah, I mean, I've always held that if your boss didn't tell you you're doing anything wrong, you're probably doing it right. Yeah. If the job was being done, which is the attitude of quite a few bosses, then they're quite happy. Though people do still feel the need, possibly, to have, um, if you like, reassurance they're doing a good job or guidance, call it what you want. Yeah. Um, Now, this is rather interesting because, yeah, okay, people are happy at home, and hopefully, I think a majority of people respect their employers, will try their best. Yeah. And a lot do feel that they're doing okay. It's interesting, that a lot of, yeah, I think it's quite a high percentage of people still are now going back into the office again or going back to the workplace. Yeah. And they don't suffer this, if you like, this need to constantly be, or they don't suffer this problem with working from home and feeling as though, ashamed about productivity issues. Okay. Now, I think it's quite interesting when you try and measure productivity. What is productivity? Okay. I can give you a task, filling a spreadsheet with figures. Yeah. For example. Yeah. Do this research and everything else. Okay. You're going to be more effective at doing that at home. Yeah. Possibly. Yeah. I mean, I've worked from home quite a lot, quite extensively when I wasn't on a site somewhere. I kind of worked from home. It seemed better than traveling, 300 kilometers to just sit in an office by myself in another city, effectively. Yeah. Um, yeah. And I just used to send things. We've got the technology to do it now. So, yeah, people used to know exactly what they needed from me. They could ask me a question, they get an immediate response. If I didn't know, I'd tell someone directly. Yeah. Or if they needed something, they know that they could contact me. And even in my present profession, which doesn't involve me more or less extensively working from home and having to communicate with some bosses I've never ever met personally. Yeah. And if you're looking for validation in this job, you're either earning money or you're not. In my present job, that tends to be the way it works. Yeah. So if people are happy, you're earning money. If you're not, yeah, you're doing something wrong and have to readjust. Um, so yeah, now I look at this and I'm thinking, well, this is a whole new stress thing. People have always felt a piece of stress, bit of stress about succeeding in their job, which should be the way. Yeah. People talk about needing to be challenged in their job, which again is not something I really understand. If you can do your job, you're getting paid, great. If you want to move up the ladder, that's great. Any person that's being over challenged in their role, there's either something wrong with the job they're in, or something wrong with the company's setup. Yes. Now, to round this part off, I've had a few conversations with people, and yeah, it's true. Now, those people that do hybrid are now being encouraged to go into the office once or even twice a week. Yeah. And they're starting to moan about it as well. So on the one hand, they're complaining they don't know. Well, not many are, but some are complaining they don't know what their bosses think, but they don't actually want to go and meet the boss, who probably has to go into the office every day. Yeah. Now, in the US, there's a certain minor entrepreneur called Elon Musk. And he has now insisted that all his employees at Tesla and SpaceX, all his employees go into the work, go into the site, as it were. We called it the office. And I think he's got a valid argument here. If you work on a production floor, like a factory or somewhere else, yeah, you can't take that work home with you. Yeah. And yeah, it's very difficult to take a car and assemble it in your own garage, for instance. Yeah, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But he's also insisting that all the other staff, that's accounting, anyone else associated with the company, goes into the office every day. Those that need to be there, weak teams need to be there. Yeah. His attitude is, if your productivity isn't good, what are you doing working for me almost? Yeah. Reading between the lines. I think that's what he's saying. Yeah. And he says it's an ethical thing. Why should somebody who has to go in the office, who's probably on a less pay than somebody who's in the office, why should the person on the factory floor go in every day and the person who's in the office gets to sit, in their shorts or whatever, in their slacks behind a computer keyboard? Okay, so I've given you a few ideas, Steve. What's your opinion on all this? Bearing in mind it's come up in the news again yesterday. Somebody saying, yeah.
Well, Donald Trump, the recently appointed president of the United States, one of his executive orders was to demand that all public employees return to the office, because simply the productivity, whatever they use as a reference, has gone down. And you got a tendency of the employee to skive off, of course.
Yeah.
If you can monitor how the productivity of a person is, then you can get rid of those that can't work on their own initiative, and keep the ones that do. I'm all in favor of going into the office, unless of course there is a problem with distance.
Well,
so, for example, your line of work, there's that problem of distance.
Yeah.
So you have to be at the home office, right?
Yeah.
But it's a matter of communication, and you do as you're self-employed, you make your own rules.
Yes.
When you're working for a third person, when you're working for an employer, you have to abide by their rules.
Yeah.
Right. And so if they say to you, you're a data processor, if they say to you that you need to do 2,000 processes a day, and you're only doing 30, then obviously there's something wrong. The stress about your level of productivity is not because you don't think you're producing enough. It's because you have nothing. You don't have a reference point. When you go to an office, you've got your colleagues around you.
Yeah.
And you strive to be the best that you can within the colleagues that are around you. You want to be the best of your particular office. When you work from home, you lose all that, and you're always going to think, can it be? As there are no standards or very few standards set for you to targets for you to reach, then of course you don't always know what your targets are, and so you're left all on your own. And if you do have targets, to meet, and you decide to have a sleep in, for example, in the morning, and then you find that you've got to make up that time during the daytime, then of course that's where the stress comes in, especially if you've got a problem with your computer, especially if you have to reboot your computer every 5 minutes, then of course it's very stressful, because it looks like you're not pulling your weight. If there was a way for the works to monitor all this, and I'm sure there are, I'm sure there are. I'm sure that even if you work for a call center, nowadays the call centers are formed not by a huge room full of people taking your call, but by about 1,000 people working from home, taking your call. And so I'm sure that these call centers, the company of the call center, is monitoring your computer to see how many calls you take, how long your calls are, and at the end, if you phone up somebody like, I don't know, like a national telephone company here, for example, at the end of your dealings with them, they say, "Will you hang on the line, please, because we need your note for you to say if you're satisfied with what I'm doing." And so I'm sure that the company receives these notes as well. I once went to a sort of citizens advice bureau in the next state, up in Fortaleza, in Ceará, sorry. And the lady behind the counter, she didn't satisfy me with what I needed. And so I said, "Where's the button? Where's the button?" I gave her a red button. I said, "I'm not satisfied." She almost cried. Cried. Because if they get sort of like 3 buttons a month, they have to go into retraining, until they get it right. So these notes of evaluation at the end are all important. Even if you do, imagine if you do 500 calls a day and everybody's dissatisfied with you, Lord knows what you're saying to the Lord knows what you're saying to the customers.
Well,
so I think as long as the company is satisfied that you are pulling your weight, as long as they can measure what you're doing, and you seem to be coping well with what you are doing, then I don't see any major problem in that. The only problem I would have is that you would lose contact with the office staff around you. And you need that sort of bravuraderie, if that's a word in English, to socialize with your office mates.
I mean, I'm not. I mean, I've worked in it. I mean, yes, it's what you call solving problems around the water cooler or something like this. And
it's chatting, just being able to. It's just social communications. It isn't just behind a screen or in front of a screen like you and I are doing now.
Well, I mean, you can keep in contact with WhatsApp and everything, but sometimes, I mean, I think it's the Francis Crick Institute in London, I mentioned before, which does biological research and medical research. They have all sorts of people, and they've actually structured their whole being is that people bump into each other, if you like, make friends sometimes, from different disciplines, and probably walk past different offices, and like say go to the vending machine and somebody's talking about a problem somebody might overhear. Oh we've got a solution for this from a totally different discipline. Yes, I mean, I do think there's this side to it, and I think that's probably what Elon Musk and possibly Donald Trump, who is an experienced businessman, whatever you might think of him as a leader of a policy of a country. He was an experienced businessman. I don't know, people level this and that about him, but yeah, he was quite open to suggestions around him and encouraged his staff to, yeah, be interactive, like Elon Musk is. Yeah, he has problem-solving sessions. Yeah. I don't believe in having a meeting every 5 minutes. I never have done. I've always thought that 70-80% of meetings were pointless. When you
Yeah,
have
and
the
they are.
yeah,
You know, I think you should only have a meeting if there's a problem.
yeah, a
To have a
progress,
meeting just to have a meeting, it just doesn't,
yeah,
or just to see if it's just to see if you're middling along.
yeah,
I
progress
don't
meetings. Yeah, yeah. What's the
really,
progress? Yeah, yeah,
yeah, not really interested in that. If I really should have a meeting if the company is feeling that the progress isn't being made, then you
yeah,
need to find out why. If it's successful,
mm,
normally it's on an individual basis. They find out
yeah,
who's been the most professional, the most productive, and normally that's done on an individual basis where the company, just as I did when I was in the
yeah,
UK. All right, I had to go to work and all this,
yeah,
it's part of my job.
yeah,
But when I was praised,
mm,
the company didn't gather everybody together and praise me. They
no,
just sent me a letter through the post,
yeah,
which was nice to receive. So, when you're praised,
mm,
well praised,
mm,
normally it's a very individual thing, and it's
yeah,
between
well,
you, them, and
yeah,
or you, me, and the deep blue sea, as they say.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's what it should be. You pat the guy on the back if he's done well. I mean, people make mistakes. It's human nature, or people act in a way they do given the circumstances at the time. And yeah, sometimes it's right at the time, but it might prove to be the wrong decision later. But hey, if you
Yeah.
can justify it yourself, yeah, as I was always told, just don't kill anyone. That's a bit difficult to work
Well,
around, but yeah,
if it's in a negative, you have to have the meeting to
yeah,
try and find out how
well,
the person
yeah,
or the people have see if they have any problems.
yeah. I
It
mean,
might be problems with personality, it might be problems with the ambience, it might be problems with their equipment,
yeah,
and you can only sort that out if you send them one letter and have them, spill the guts,
yeah,
so to speak. They're not always going to say what they think, so you have to bring them down.
yeah,
You have to have the group meeting
yeah,
to sort of try and find out, even if not through them directly, but
mm,
through the colleagues, what's going on exactly.
yeah, yeah. I mean that's teamwork, team support. I mean, yeah, I mean teams. I mean, they used to have team building and things like this, which I used to find a bit. Yeah, you work in, you have your colleagues, they're not going to be your best mates. I mean, you might choose to socialise with some. That's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, we'll have the occasionally some people have the occasional office romance, which are horrible things because they completely disrupt the whole dynamic of the team. But
Many people get married through that.
well, yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to condemn it totally. Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's worked in that environment, it's not necessarily when it's going right, it's all right. It's when it goes wrong, that's when your problems can start, and that's
And
when yeah,
you touched on something, and you said that if the company doesn't get hold of you to find out, you
mm,
must be doing something right if they
yeah,
don't say anything. That
mm,
all depends on the manager.
yeah,
Because if you've got a laissez-faire manager
mm,
and they just let everybody get on with it, the whole thing is going to go. The whole company will go up the wall.
yeah,
We see things like The Office.
yeah,
It's a typical thing, where David Brent
yeah,
is more concentrated on trying to make himself popular and
yeah. It's
than
irritating.
to produce, to get some solid results.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's almost what we call virtual signaling now, I believe. But yes, itself. But it's a little bit darker than that was. Good series that was. I never felt the American version quite had the bite the British version had. Yeah, and
Well,
I could watch the American version with no problems. Like I cringe at the British version, not because it's bad, because it's too brilliant. Yeah.
well,
Um,
don't
Yeah,
sidetrack too much. Let's concentrate
yeah, yeah,
on the office worker going into the office.
yeah. But again, I mean, that's it. Yeah, but that gives a good example of the dynamics of people working together, the good and the bad, if you like.
Yeah, of course.
Um, yeah, I mean, this thing about work in isolation. Okay, I'm somebody that can work in isolation. I can also go into an office or a work environment and be okay as well. Yeah, it doesn't particularly bother me. Um, yeah, I mean, again, companies have got to make that shot. I mean, I agree with Elon Musk. Again, it's what he calls it's ethical. Yeah, you get the guy on the shop floor who's working. He's working very hard to produce the item. Ultimately, it's the cars or the space vehicles. Yeah, that need to be that actually make the money for the organization. Although Tesla's a slightly different thing, but yeah, are yeah, so that makes the money. So if the guys on the ground are sort of looking up and only seeing, the Joe from the accountants department come in once every month or something, yeah, and complaining about doing so, yeah,
Well, look, it depends on the demands of the job.
yeah,
You
of
know,
course, yeah,
I mean, Elon Musk, he hardly ever goes into the office. You
yeah,
know,
but
he spends more time at Mar-a-Lago than he does going into the office in Texas
yeah, is it?
because, he can. His job doesn't demand that
No,
he's there 24 hours, 7 days a week.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
you can
but
argue, yeah,
even though he is responsible for the whole caboodle, 365 days of the year.
well, yeah,
However,
yeah,
different strokes for different folks,
yeah.
as they say.
I mean, the sales guy. I mean, you could argue he's partly sales. He's the face of Tesla. Yeah, he's got to be shaking the right
Yeah,
hands.
and anywhere he goes, he's the face of Tesla. You're right. So
Yeah,
even if he goes to the supermarket to buy something, he's the
yeah,
face of Tesla.
yeah.
There's no escaping it for him. There's no
No,
escape.
yeah. I mean, I don't know what it's like to work with. I have actually seen interviews with people who work with him who say he's difficult to work with, but he knows he's focused. Yeah. So when he says something, he wants his staff in there and focused. And this thing about productivity, if you can't be productive working for me, I mean, that was always his argument with Twitter. Yeah. 80% of the staff were removed from Twitter. Um, and he says, turns out you don't need that many. Yeah. I
But
mean,
he's I found out recently that
mm,
he's slightly autistic,
yeah. I mean,
Elon
slightly
Musk. And
brain rot.
so
Yeah.
when he concentrates on something,
Mm,
he really concentrates on something.
mm,
It's a little bit like Rain Man.
yeah. I mean,
You know. And
yeah.
so if you can't keep up with him
Yeah.
when he's off on his tangent
Yeah.
on what he wants to concentrate on,
Mm.
and you have to keep up with him. You have to keep up. It's what
Yeah. He's aware of that himself, though, and he does.
yeah, so yes, he is.
He does. If you like, bend a bit. Yeah. He
Yeah,
pulls
yep.
himself back, and he's probably instructed one or two people around him. Can you just take me to one side if you think I'm not being human enough? Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's what
But
it is.
you can guarantee that he didn't say that to somebody off the shop floor.
No, but it wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I think he go. Yeah, I mean, I've seen videos of him walking down the shop floor, but it's again, yeah, I don't know. Again, why should a senior manager work on the shop floor? Look on the shop floor all the time as well. I mean, it's twofold thing that is. He shouldn't need to be checking up on there. He's got supervisors on the shop floor. Yeah, as was said to me one day. Yeah, why are you here checking up on the staff? You've got supervisors beneath you to do that, to report to you. Yeah. If you
Once
can't,
once
yeah,
once in a while, it's always good for a manager to
yeah,
to
of
have
course
a
it is.
have a
Yeah,
walk around with the shop floor.
yeah,
He'll identify
yeah,
um, problems before they happen.
yeah,
That's why he's paid to do that. A manager, he should only ever work when there's a problem.
mm,
So if he's savvy enough
mm,
to go around to try and identify problems before they happen
yeah,
and resolve them, he'll never get called to a problem
no,
because he's always one step ahead. And
yeah,
the supervisor doesn't have the same ability
mm,
as the manager. If he did, then he'd be a manager.
yeah. But
And
again,
so,
yeah, but it brings it back again. Yeah, the working from home to the working on site or in the in the location. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
We say this, you know, I mean, like I said, depends on what the tasks are.
yeah.
Working from home, it's all purely electronic.
Yeah.
It's purely, you know, nothing manual. I mean, I used to know an artisan in Spain, and he made all his bracelets and necklaces and earrings.
Yeah.
He made all those at home and then
Mm,
sent them off to sell them.
mm,
But very rarely you would get a factory that keep. I should imagine very rarely you get a factory that needs a high stock of pieces to be assembled that they
yeah.
give like, you know,
Yeah.
20,000 pieces to each worker and say, get on with it at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'd all have to be at work.
I mean, I must admit, well, the one or two times I have to actually go out on site to see a client, I actually look forward to, because else I'm sitting here doing this effectively. Yeah, you do feel, I wouldn't say feel the isolation. It depends on your state of mind, because yeah, obviously I'm interfacing with people all the time. But yes, you are separate. I do work for people. I work for myself, but also work for people. And it's yeah, I mean it's nice when they send you an email. Thank you for doing this. Or, when you do them a favor even, yeah. They ask you, can you do a favor? Oh, thanks for this, I need this and all this sort of thing. Yeah, because it's a human thing. It doesn't really matter to me. They ask me to do something, I will do it. Um, yeah, sometimes a bit of additional to my job, but it's nice to have that sometimes because it gives you something else to think about. Yeah. But it's yeah, I mean people, yeah, I think it's looking at individual, you're quite right. The type of job, if it's sales, okay, traditionally that was remote. It's a lot easier for salespeople now. If you're doing accounts, I'm sorry, but I think people that are doing accounts should at least be going into the office twice a week. Yeah, to touch base with their managers to see what's going on. To get feed.
Even if it means the managers to check over the numbers.
Yeah, yeah, sit down with them. And also, yeah, it's yeah, as you said, to have the more personal touch about it. And yeah, if there's a problem, and you can tell sometimes, I mean, people talk about well-being, you don't know if somebody's having issues unless they're in front of you, and you can tell from face. I mean, facial expressions aren't everything. Yeah, like, there's but you can tell if somebody's demeanor or something else like that. And yeah, if there's something wrong, there might be something wrong at home. Yeah, it might even be a case that somebody actually wants to come in the office but is scared to ask. Yeah, I want to come in every day now because I can't stand being at home anymore. Yeah, but I'm scared to ask because sometimes there's peer pressure from the colleagues who want to stay at home, and it takes one person to break that. And the fear is that the whole company will start putting it in as policy. Yeah. So,
Well,
yeah,
you can bet your bottom dollars that a British civil servant will never want to come into the office. They don't want to work 5 days a week. They've said that anyway.
yeah,
They only want to work four.
yeah,
And you know, so that's why when you have an alien come into the UK for asylum,
yeah.
it takes 5 years to sort his case out.
So what?
That's why they've got a huge backlog.
So that's what you're saying, that the Red Lion in Westminster is crowded on a Friday afternoon after about 1 o'clock. Yes.
And that's not that normally happens on Fleet Street with the journalists.
Well, it used to.
You know,
Yeah, they're not there anymore. Well, yeah, very few, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the civil service, the politicians, and the journalists were used to be able to drink a lot on a Friday. Yeah,